Good evening, everyone. Are Australian guides under the age of 30 years of today more resourceful than the English guides under the age of 30 years in 1910, 100 years ago? And just to talk about one little thing that my worthy opponent said regarding the throwaway society of today, 100 years ago they didn't have all of the electrical gear etc. that we've got today, so they really didn't need to throw it away anyway. However, today's guides face enormous pressures and stress that were not present 100 years ago. They were not required to make decisions. Their lives were mapped out for them. If they went to school, when they stopped going to school, when they would eat, what they would wear, in many cases even who they would marry. And who made these decisions? Sorry guys, but the fathers. They weren't expected to have an opinion. In fact, they were not even allowed to often. And if they did, what happened to them if they voiced that opinion? Well, we just won't go down that way. But today, girls are expected to make decisions that affect their own lives and those of others. Certainly, the young women today have the advantage of technology, but they have to work harder to establish their identity and be seen as more than a machine or an email or a text message. Yes, guides of today are more resourceful than 100 years ago because they have to be. Today, the world is their oyster. How can a rally of 10,000 possibly compare with a world stage of today? A summit in Copenhagen attended by hundreds of thousands. The Commission on Status of Women, a conference in New York attended by tens of thousands of women. A youth forum in Mexico in November this year, which will be attended by hundreds of resourceful young people, aiming to identify action priorities for youth to be dealt with on the international agenda beyond the Millennium Development Goals. And at all of these events and others, guiding women under the age of 30 are present. Through WAGs, guides have found ways to be heard on the international stage, and through their resourcefulness, they have found ways to bring the message home and to disseminate this information and spread it to others. They have embraced and used these new technologies to spread the word on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and we all know their speed at texting and MSNing is beyond belief. 3 years ago, Girl Guides Australia conducted the Australian Guide Say project, giving guides and young women the opportunity to tell us about the issues that are of concern to them and to then help them have a greater understanding of these issues and to enable them to speak out to those who can influence change. And what was the number one priority? The environment and everything to do with it. Climate change, conservation, clean drinking water for all. Now, 100 years ago, was this a problem that was on everyone's lips? Especially young women who didn't even have to choose what they were going to wear each day and probably only had a choice of 2 dresses in any case, which they didn't wash all the time as we do today, so they really didn't have to worry about wasting water with the washing. Today, thanks to the ability to problem solve because they are so resourceful, young women are helping to find solutions to these environmental issues and again, through the many communication means available to them, are promoting other young guiding women to indeed change the world. And the environment is only one of the MDGs we need to think about. MDG 7 helps save the planet, but what about the others, such as eradicating poverty and hunger, achieving universal primary education, promoting gender equality, reducing child mortality, improving maternal health, fighting such diseases as HIV/AIDS and malaria, or encouraging global partnerships. My goodness, the world was such a small place that either it was not known that any of these were a problem, or in fact, they weren't actually a problem. But today these issues are, and they are of concern to our guides and our young women. They recognise the issues and they have to be resourceful enough to be the change. Let's face reality. No longer is it good enough to sew a button on a shirt or make a delicious cake or a cup of tea. Great skills undoubtedly, but today's under 30-year-olds with all their extra responsibilities and the opportunities also have pressure, challenge and responsibility. They must be resourceful enough to embrace the opportunities for them and to find their passions, nurture them and develop the strength and self-confidence to reach their full potential. And one last comment. Today's guides have to contend with members who are over 30, which they didn't have to worry about 100 years ago. So they have to deal not only with their own goals, but they have to find ways to get round the roadblocks. They certainly have to be creative and resourceful to do that. Yes, today's guides under the age of 30 are certainly very resourceful young women. Thank you.
Good evening. Welcome. I'm going to speak about personal responsibility and the changing roles, rules and restrictions. But before I do that, I would like to address some of the things in the second speaker's case. Firstly, when our first speaker was speaking of a throwaway society, she didn't even mention electrics. She was talking of things like birds. And though what we're arguing about is resourcefulness, we're not saying that we have less choices. We have so many more choices, that we have less opportunities. We're arguing about the resourcefulness, and a lot of the affirmative team's case wasn't built around resourcefulness at all. Another point, they talked of texting mobile phones. What happens when girls run out of credit? I had something to deal with a lot with my girls. Oh, sorry, I couldn't answer it, I had no credit. Oh, my phone died. Especially in major difficulties, which is part of the definition of resourcefulness. The Victorian bushfires, phones went down. You can't count on modern technology. To move on to personal responsibility, I believe that resourcefulness goes initiative. Today's Australian guides live in a world that does not promote self-responsibility or accountability, and does not encourage initiative or resourcefulness, especially in our youth. The schools and workplaces frequented by our youth do not promote resourcefulness. The girls are told when they'll do what, where they'll do it, and are given the resources with which to do it. Think of things like Woolworths. They're not asked to be resourceful, they're asked to follow instructions. If there's a problem, well, I don't need to worry about it, I'll just call the manager. In 1910, girls had to fight for that education, especially after they were 14. Today's world, you can get an education up to and beyond university. The financial landscape that we're operating in is so different. If a girl can't support herself, if her family can't support her, the government will, which means that they're not placed in anywhere near as dire circumstances. So they don't have to use the resources they have to the same degree. They don't have to learn to make ends meet anywhere near the same way. Thrift is a word that I know a lot of the girls I know don't have in their vocabulary. If the definition of resourceful is, as the affirmative team pointed out, ingenious, skillful in overcoming difficulties, as defined by the Macquarie Dictionary, then is running to one's parents and the government in times of difficulty resourceful? I don't believe so. The Crystal Palace rally, I think, is actually a really good example of just how resourceful those girls were. They created guiding. Yeah, we may be able to go all the way around the world, but we don't have to work anywhere near as hard to get there. We have support. The girls of today, I believe, are a lot less inclined to offer practical help. We'll send money to things like disaster zones, but we won't send ourselves. The guides 100 years ago went to the signing of the Peace Treaty in Versailles in France and acted as messengers. Girls went from Tasmania post-World War I and helped out. I don't know of a single Tasmanian guide who went to Victoria after the bushfires there. I don't even know of anyone who went to Waiatina after the fires, and that's in our own state. And frankly, I don't think that they would have wanted most of the girls that we could have sent, because they don't have the practical experience of resourcefulness. The rules and restrictions. The restrictions, I believe, on today's guides are ironically more limiting than they were 100 years ago. Public liability and legality have changed the way that our world operates. Guidelines is how we deal with that. Think of things like voting, the qualifications that we have to do anything. That cow that our first speaker spoke of, I don't think we'd be allowed to take it on campus, because it would be a health risk. Yeah. In conclusion, I believe that the guides of 1910 simply had to be more resourceful. They didn't have a choice. The guides of today are taught so many things, this huge plethora of concepts and skills, but I don't believe that in a lot of circumstances resourcefulness is one of them, and they're not given the opportunity to practice it in this world. Resourcefulness as a necessity.